Hey, it's Greg on here with MaritimeGardening.com. I'm going to do a little video here where I talk about some viewer questions I've had. I put a video out, about, I don't know, half a week ago about how to make fermented pickles, and I got a lot of questions. And I've done a couple videos on fermentation. I've done podcasts. Check out my podcast, MaritimeGardening.com. I've done podcasts on lacto-fermentation, fermenting things the old-fashioned way, and all the reasons why it's easier in a lot of ways, and it's also good for you in a lot of ways, and it actually costs less also. So there's a lot of benefits to it. And the flavor is, you can't compare the flavor, it's just better, in my opinion anyway. So I answered all the questions on YouTube in the comments section. I try to stay up with comments and answering things like that. But I just decided, my background as a teacher, if you have one student out of 30 has a question, probably half the class has that same question. They just don't necessarily have the nerve to put up their hand. So I'm going to run with that, and I'm going to try to do more of this. I mean, speaking to viewer questions on YouTube, because I think it's good content. It's basically, it's viewer-driven content, so it's worth doing, right? So I'm going to talk to all the questions that came up based on that video. Number one, if you have any questions, I would say go into the description box of that video. I'll put a link to it down here after this video. Go into the description box and read the sources that I gave you to read up on this yourself, right? These are published sources from agricultural extensions of universities, right? Which I consider the best resource you can have. Not some whack job website on the internet, but actual published from an official institution. You can't just say anything when you're publishing out of a university. You have to run it by a whole bunch of people. None of those people are on the payroll of any big company, right? They're just academics trying to maintain their own integrity as experts in their field. So as sources go, my opinion, these are the most reliable. Okay, speaking to the questions. Actually, this first one wasn't a question. One of the viewers spoke to the two pickles, the way I showed to cut them in half and put them on top to keep the other ones from floating up. She called them, or Veery, I don't know if it's a she or she or a he. The name was Veery, but Sacrificals was the name for those pickles, the pickles that go on top. I like that. I think I'm going to use that from now on. Sacrificals, right? The pickles that you put on top to keep the other ones from coming up above that layer of water to keep the whole thing anaerobic. Another person asked me, what if you have no grape leaves? What do you do if you have no grape leaves? I've got grape leaves, I can use them. First answer would be, find a friend with grape leaves. Or a neighbor that's got grape. I mean, anyone that grows grapes, they don't care if you take a couple leaves, right? Just take them whenever you need them. For a batch, you need 3 or 4, depending on the size of the batch. For the ones I showed, half-gallon jar, 3 good size, or 4 sort of smaller size. A good size grape leaf is the size of a hand, sort of large person's hand like mine. So easiest answer is get a friend with grape leaves and take some of theirs. But if you can't get that, oak leaves will work from what I've read. I've never used them, so I'm not speaking from experience here, but everything I've read is they say use the oak leaves that have rounded tips. White oak has that. Also English oak has the same thing. I don't know if English oak or white oak, I don't know the same thing, but some oaks have like pointy tips. And from everything I've read, those aren't the ones you want to use. Not exactly sure why. But if you use, or bay leaves, right? If you use any one of those things, they have the tannins that seem to encourage or preserve the crunchiness of the pickle. And my pickles are always crunchy. I was using mine up until, I can't remember if it was March or April. They were still good, they were still crunchy, they were wonderful, right? So that's your options as far as based on what I know. If anyone else knows other things you can use, let me know. I've read about tea bags. I don't know if that works or not. Has anyone tried to use tea bags in their pickles? Please let me know. There was comments about spices. I didn't use much spice in mine. I just used dill and garlic. Of course, you can add other things if you want, whatever you like, right? You can add peppercorns, or it just depends on how you like it, right? Use you know, if you got some family recipe, if you do it the vinegar way with the heat and the boiling and the canning, and there's a certain array of spices that goes in those, just add that to the fermented mix. It'll be fine. There was a question about the ends, right? The blossom ends. From everything, you know, do you have to cut those off? I think one of the viewers said, I don't cut them off and everything's fine. That's possible. From what I've read, the blossom end in particular, so you got two ends, a stem and the end where the actual flower is. Usually when you pick the pickle, there's no flower. That's the end. There's an enzyme that can be in the blossom end that can, there's a chance, make the pickle go all mushy. It's just a chance, right? It's not to say that if you just leave the ends on, everything won't be fine. Everything could be fine. There's a chance if you leave that on there, something could go wrong. It could be mushy. So for me, based on all the sources I've read, there's a chance it could go all mushy if you don't cut the blossom end off. So what I do is I cut both the ends off just to be safe, and everything always works out fine, right? So it doesn't take that long, and I don't find it to be that big a deal. Maybe if you're doing 500 pounds, it really adds up and it's not worth your time and it's worth the risk. I don't know, you make that decision up for yourself. But I make about, I don't know, 8 gallons of pickles a year. I eat 95% of the pickles in my house. 8 gallons is about right for me. It's worth it to cut the ends off for me rather than take the risk of them going mushy. I'd hate to open up a jar and have all these nasty mushy pickles. So, and there's fairly good, you know, variety of resources out there from a variety of sources that suggest that you do that. So I think it's pretty safe to say that you're taking a risk if you don't cut the blossom ends off. And if you don't know which end that is, just cut both the ends off and that's safe. There was another comment asking, I heard refrigeration destroys the enzymes. I heard it destroys the health benefits, you know, everything that's good about them. I haven't found anything on the resources I consult that speaks to that. On my own experience, the culture, you know, the actual bacteria that's in the pickle, when you put it in the fridge, your fridge is about 5 degrees, I'm going to speak in Celsius here, it's 5 degrees Celsius, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, maybe 40 or 45 or something like that. I know 50 degrees Fahrenheit is 10 degrees Celsius. And the best storage, ideal storage temperature for pickles is somewhere around 10 degrees Celsius. And if you bury them in the ground, they're fine too. They have to be kept cold, right? They won't keep if you don't keep them cool. Now, too cool will shut the whole thing down, but there's a certain amount of coolness which is good, and there's a certain amount of coolness which is too much. But if it's too warm, they won't keep either, right? So you got to what you want to do is get them cool to slow down the fermentation so that the pickle stays good and you still get all those benefits and so on, right? So if you have pickles in the fridge, the culture doesn't die from them being in the fridge. The fridge is typically around 5 Celsius. The culture doesn't die from that. And if the culture doesn't die, then the enzymes are still there. Everything's still fine. So I do not see, and I've never read anything from a source I trust that suggests that putting them in the fridge somehow kills the enzymes and removes whatever health benefits you're going to get. And really, if you're eating pickles for a health benefit, there's healthier things out there. I mean, when you ferment them like this, they get a lot of salt. I mean, you can only eat 1 or 2 a day. You're getting ridiculous doses of salt anyway. I love salty food, but if that pickle is your vitamin pill, I would seek out other vitamins pills. Okay, that's just my advice, right? There's other things. Have an apple or something like that. Eat the pickle because it tastes good, right? It's a side effect of eating the salty pickle is that it has some probiotic effect and some health benefits. But I am certainly not eating pickles because I think they're like making me some sort of Superman. I'm eating them and it tastes good and they go good with things I like to eat. The final question was, how long can you store them? I don't know how many pickles you make. It's never an issue for me because I always run out. Actually, this year, in particular, I made a vow to myself not to give too many away. I gave a lot away last year, and I ran out before I had more, right? And I kind of really enjoyed having a couple every, whatever, a couple times a week or whatever, just having a couple nice, really good salty pickles. They just taste so much better than the vinegar pickled type or whatever you can buy. They're really good. And I ran out, and I gave some to people, so I made a lot of pickles. Like, insane. My wife thought I was nuts when I made this many. I ate them all. My son had a couple, my wife had a couple, and I gave a couple jars away. And I ran out right around the beginning of April, as I recall. I was out, right? My last jar was in the fridge, and around sometime in April, and I ran out because, I got my first batch this week, right? We're in August. I just got my first batch of this year's pickles now. I had the first one today. And it's around, August 10th or 11th or something like that. So I didn't have enough to last till now, so I didn't have enough, right? But I can tell you that the ones I ate in April were fine. Absolutely fine. They were crunchy, they were good, no quality lost. And from what I've read, they say 1 to 2 years. Best to eat them within 1 year. After 1 year, you're sort of rolling the dice. They start to go mushy, and they just lose their texture, and everything that you like about them starts to go away. I'm sure they still have nutritional value if you were in a hard situation and trying surviving off of pickles or something like that. I'm sure you could still eat them after some fashion, but they're at their best if they're eaten within a year, and that's fine because you're going to get new pickles every year, right? So a year. Probably less because you're probably going to eat them all before then. And my goodness, if you lend them to anyone, they're going to keep asking you for them, and it's going to be a balancing act to keep everybody happy and get enough for you. Finally, just a little science experiment you can do with your pickles, something you might want to try. Because remember, when you make these pickles, you're just making a brine solution, right? Salt and water. And you're adding your garlic and your pickles and your grape leaves, and that's it, right? And just letting it sit on the counter. If you don't believe that it's becoming an acidic solution, and it can get to around a pH of 4, right? A pH of 7 is neutral, and anything lower than 7 is acidic. And from everything I've read, it can get to 4. If you don't know if that's happened, if you're concerned, right? If you had it on the counter for a week and you taste them, like, I don't know. Not everyone knows what acidic tastes like, right? Take a couple tablespoons of the pickle juice, put it in a jar, take a teaspoon of baking soda, which is alkaline, right? And alkalines react with acids, right? So take, just like anything, right? If you put vinegar with baking, everybody that bakes knows this. If you take vinegar and put it with baking soda, it all fizzes up, right? So take some of the salt water that you had in your pickles for a week, which is now acidic because of the reaction of the bacteria that make this whole thing happen. If you don't believe that, take some of it, and I've done it, because I don't believe anything until I've checked it out for myself. Take some of that, take a couple tablespoons, put it in a little jar, take a teaspoon of baking soda, not baking powder, baking soda, throw it in there, it'll fizz, right? And it's fizzing because that brine has gone from being just saline to saline and acidic. It's acidic, and because it's acidic now, and there's no protein in there, anything that's problematic or risky or not good for you, or different pathogens, it's just an inhospitable environment. Read those resources I attached at the bottom of that video. It'll confirm that, right? It just becomes a very safe environment for relatively long-term storage, 1 year, 1 to 2 years of certain kind of vegetables that respond well to this form of fermentation. So, I hope that was useful. I hope you found that good information for your questions, whether you pose them or not. And if you did enjoy that, please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. And until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching.